My name's Una and I live in East Kilbride. I've lived here for most of my life. My parents came here to work for Rolls-Royce, and as I grew up I realised that they were very conservative kind of people and basically rebelled against that and became a very strong Labour supporter. When I was at college I used to assist a friend who posted the Socialist Worker through the doors in her neighbourhood, and I'd go around and do stuff like that. And that kind of allegiance to Labour has been part of my life all through my life, until New Labour stepped in, and I realised that we were not ever going to have a socialist backing at all. Scotland was trying really hard, and the choices disappeared when New Labour got into power. And I was so disillusioned, looking for some other avenue to pursue, and realised that SNP were talking way more sense than Labour ever were at that point. I started off being an auxiliary nurse in Phillips Hill Hospital, which no longer exists. It just isn't there anymore. It was a small orthopaedic hospital, and I worked in the children's ward while I was doing extra O-levels so that I could get into occupational therapy college. I passed as an occupational therapist and worked in the community for a few years, and was deputy manager for a centre for disabled adults. And left that to have my own children. My second child was born with multiple and complex needs and a life-limiting condition. It was never fully diagnosed, and I think it's really the difficulties that I came across when I was trying to access assistance for him that made the biggest impact on me. Well, my life before that had potential. It had potential for a really nice middle-class life. I had a good job, my husband worked, we had a nice flat, we'd just bought a house when Richard was born, and suddenly we didn't have an income because I had to leave to look after this child. It became apparent over a few years that my husband would have to give up work as well because it was 24-hour care. We could have taken the road where we put him into care, but my experiences of that, when we finally chose respite, was just such a relief that we hadn't done it, because he wouldn't have had the care that he had. We had some dreadful experiences of care when we were looking for respite, and it wasn't until we were referred to Rachel House, the children's hospice in Kinross, that we actually found a level of care that was what should be available to everybody all the time. Even before we got to the stage of really needing that respite care, when we went to, it was York Hill Hospital that Richard was admitted to, and the staff there were wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And over the years of him being there, we spent months at a time living there, travelling backwards and forwards, and one of us here and one of us in the hospital, and looking after two girls as well. So the family was kind of split up a lot of the time, and the support that we got at the beginning was absolutely, we just couldn't fault it, absolutely couldn't fault it. As the years went on, and the decision was taken to change the nursing hierarchy, and the enrolled nurses were done away with altogether, we found that the whole situation was changing, gradually changing. Nurses with staff nurse qualifications appeared to be doing it more for the sake of a degree than for the dedication that was required for the job. Since the Scottish Parliament have taken over control of the NHS in Scotland, there's a few things that I've noticed that are definitely definite improvements. The regional pay deals that are becoming prominent in England, they're being pushed because there's a shortage of nurses in less popular areas to work in. There's enhanced payments being offered or on the cards to be offered for the less attractive areas, the less attractive jobs. That's not happening in Scotland. I'm really relieved that that's not happening, because it creates a hierarchy of what's good nursing, what's bad nursing. I think if nurses are paid in gradients according to their qualifications and their abilities, their experience and their willingness to take on more training and more responsibility, then that's a much more practical way to go. But there should be an across the board wage structure, and I think that's the way Scotland's going to jump. I think that's what they're looking at. I agree with Alex Salmon that the system in Scotland is much better. Scotland's medical consortium that advise on drugs have a much better system of regulating the drugs in Scotland than NICE seem to have. I think if we keep the standards that are set down by the Scottish Board and draw in the finances from what's being poured down the drain by the old system that's been put in place by New Labour and the English government. And I think that's happening to some extent. That's happening. We are managing to control infection much better in Scotland than we ever did before. The standards of cleanliness and hygiene are much improved in the hospitals. We are getting there. And I think if we can use the finance that we'll save from that and do some more community work so that people don't end up in hospital, a bit more controlling the obesity of children in schools so that they don't end up being very ill adults, and drawing back some of the cash that's been laid down for that, then that's a much better road to go down. The drugs would become available then. We would have the cash to give to everybody that's needing these drugs instead of just the elite that can manage to apply for them. I've had a whole lifetime of different experiences, made me realise that Labour are never going to be Labour anymore until we can generate a new Labour Party within Scotland, because as we're dominated by England, it's never going to happen again. I've got a number of friends who are of similar mind, and particularly more older people now who are realising that their allegiances have been absolutely destroyed. There is no such thing as Labour in Scotland at the moment, and there could be. And I think that's one of the main reasons that I would really like Scotland to become independent. I think Labour that's in existence just now has become more capitalist, more Tory, but that work ethic doesn't go with it anymore. It's a kind of greed. I don't know, a kind of me. I can get this. I need this. I want this materialistic kind of atmosphere that's generated from them now. And the converse of that is that there's a group of people who don't want to work, who just don't have any interest. They don't see themselves making progress. What is the point of going out and working a hard day to come back with pennies in their pocket? Their wages are not justifying the labour that's put in. So I think we need to look at the youth. We need to look at training and establishing apprenticeships and going back to a pride in what we're doing, which is the way Labour used to run. I've spoken to a couple of people. One in particular recently was had a history in the military. A really nice guy, really intelligent person, but his main concern was that we would have no defence, we would have no military defence in this country. It was too small to sustain its own forces. And I don't understand why. I couldn't really convince him that this was not an issue, that other countries seem to manage it, other smaller than ours seem to manage it. I don't understand it. And he seemed to think that we were being supported by England as well, that this deficit thing that was going on was a reason to hang on to England. And I really think that it's kind of blown out of all proportion by the English. I don't know, it's kind of propaganda, I suppose, that England have promoted, juggling figures and juggling statistics to say that the predictions that have come from Scotland's investigations are wrong. And so it's who you believe, I suppose, basically, in the long run. And I'm more inclined to believe Scottish statistics than English. They don't want us to leave. I can understand why they don't want us to leave. We're quite a wealthy part of the UK, and I think it would be a major loss to them if we were to separate from the United Kingdom. Alex Salmond's only one person, do you know? I quite like him, but that's beside the point. You know, he's only one man. SNP are just the means of getting there. It's the machinery that we use to establish our own free democracy again. We don't have that freedom in this country. We've never voted a Tory in up here. You know, why should we be living under Tory rule when we don't have Conservatives voted in our country? It just doesn't make sense to me. I think by voting yes, we're giving ourselves a really good chance of improving everybody's lifestyle in Scotland. I think some of the myths that are propagated by Westminster are just that. They're myths, they're scaremongering. We're being fed a diet of fear at the moment because they're scared of losing us. The whole fairy story of Scotland's oil is running out and panic, and the value of it's going to go down and panic. I mean, it's just, I know people in the work on the rigs and they laugh. They laugh when they hear stuff like that. It's just not true. And I think that's only part of the stories that we're being fed. You know, we can support a military. We can improve the NHS. We can have a welfare state back. We can have a decent democracy. There's nothing to stop us. We've always been a really inventive, innovative, friendly nation that gets on with everyone else. And why on earth should we think otherwise? Why on earth should we be under the thumb for any longer? We've done this for so long. Why are we sitting here letting them do it to us? I don't get it. Vote yes. It just makes so much sense to do it. We're worth more than that.